everyone. Thanks for being with me. I just am so excited that here in Australia we have completely red states, which is bizarre. And if you're living in somewhere like the United States, I guess you might be a little bit surprised by that. But we do. And red in our country means Labor, means progressives are in power right across the continent, with the exception of a little island called Tasmania. But I'm sure there will come a time when they will realise their failings and probably vote for a Labor government as well. So, but the interesting thing is that Sky News, which is the equivalent, I guess, to Fox, is upset. To put it mildly, they are extremely distressed about what's been happening across our country, and they can't explain it. That's what interests me. They have got no idea as to what's happening. They can't justify it in any possible way, and they're angry. They are very, very angry, and it's kind of sad to see, because, well, I don't know why it's sad to see, but it is sad. I guess I just don't like seeing people so angry, particularly people that I despise. Even they have rights, but being angry, well, let's see how angry they are, and we'll talk about it as we go through it. So here they are. Well, we could call them the three monkeys, which I guess that's an insult to monkeys. The three morons, maybe. But let's hear what they have to say, because it's fascinating.
Okay, so it was, let's get down to brass tacks. It was the New South Wales election last night. We now have a Labor government wall to wall across Australia.
Well,
we do.
Apart from Tasmania, little Tasmania.
Across mainland Australia, it's all Labor now. So Labor, let's see how socialism works. Let's see Australia. Let's see what this is like, this grand experiment, Rita.
And I just love Morrow here. So try and count the number of times they say woke, as if woke is a really bad thing. I mean, I always think that when you're woke, you're awake, you're aware of what's happening, and you don't want to vote for people that are asleep, that are not engaged. And this is the problem with the Liberal Party at the moment, right across the country, is that they're not engaged with the community. And these people here that you're watching right now are the least engaged of them all.
Well, we've been here before. This is what a lot of the political pundits and some of the analysis we've already seen, which anytime Labor wins, there seems to be this assumption that it's the final verdict. Australia's made up its mind. Australia's changed. Everything's different now. We were here in 2007. In fact, if you go back, Tasmania was Labor as well, so it was a clean sweep. And then we saw how that went after a few years. So these are different characters in power. Things can go very differently, but you cannot deny that this was an absolutely resounding victory for Minns. He was always a very capable candidate. He presented well. He's not threatening. I know a lot of Conservative voters who were...
And they really don't like Rita for saying this, actually. And very rarely do you hear her say anything positive about the left of politics. And here she is, at least being reasonable up until this stage about the way she views the election and why we are shifting further and further to the left.
Were not too upset about his victory. So, and obviously we know
that's the problem for me. That is the problem for me. That speech by Dominic.
And here we go. Here's Morrow. Now, Morrow, this bloke really hates the idea that the Labor Party across Australia are now so dominant. Absolutely hates it, can't come to terms with it, wants us to go back to these conservative views, these narrow-minded, small government, capitalistic type views, which the country has rejected, but not Morrow. He's sitting in the past.
Dominic Perrottet, they're now saying, what a great speech it was by Dominic Perrottet last night, where he's basically saying, oh, fantastic, you've got a great premier here. We don't want Labor. Now we've got Labor.
Hold on. If he doesn't want Labor, But what he fails to understand, and he fails to understand our electoral system, is that the majority of people have chosen Labor. So he doesn't want Labor because, well, I guess he disagrees with most things that are progressive because he's a narrow-minded dick. But at the end of the day, he wants it to be more conservative. And because it isn't, he spits the dummy big time.
Thanks, Liberals. That's what you gave us. Thanks, Matt Keane. Thanks, Dominic Perrottet. You've given us a Labor government. We don't want one. That's not what the people of New South Wales want. Okay.
Yes, they do. They just voted for you, you clown. They just voted for the Labor Party. That's what they want. That's what they've got. You have to get in step.
They might have voted for it only because you didn't give them a conservative alternative.
Well, I mean, look, it's one thing to say that, they didn't give enough of a conservative alternative.
Well, they didn't.
Well, all right, sure, fine, they didn't. But it's also really interesting to note that Labor went and, ran essentially an identikit Dom Perrottet candidate. They ran Chris Binns.
So I like this idea. So this concept is that Labor won because they were more liberal. And then they try and confront the notion that Liberals lost because they weren't progressive enough. So it's almost like they can't take a bet either way. And basically, at the end of the day, they have no idea what in the hell they're talking about, but they are confused. That's quite obvious.
From the Labor right. So the idea that this means that there's some sort of massive leftward shift in the electorate is, I think a nonsense. You're going to hear that a lot from commentators. That said, the Liberals have a lot of problems here, and they go beyond just Matt Keane. I mean, it's one thing to say, Matt Keane is terrible and treacherous, and he absolutely is, and he has dragged the party far to the left in New South Wales, far to the left where it should be. But, the Libs also need to deal with a lot of issues they have. They have not figured out a way to cut through to younger voters. The fact that a seat like Willoughby on the lower North Shore has a 20% swing against it.
Actually, that's true. They haven't found a way to negotiate their terms with the 18 through to 35 age bracket. They've lost their way and they don't know how to get back because a lot of those people want parity in terms of income, they want better housing, they want better wages, and they want their healthcare system and their education system to be better, which is only offered by the left. So these are the reasons why in New South Wales and right across Australia, the Conservatives are losing.
And is now on a knife edge, shows that they have a real problem here in terms of getting people over the line. I think, the fact that they haven't done more to over, 12 years here, 9 years federally, get young people into houses. They've lost the millennial argument there. Labor has gone here, and this is really important. This is what Peter Dutton and whoever winds up taking over the Libs in New South Wales needs to know. Labor has put together a coalition of millennials, migrants, renters, and public servants. It's a very powerful coalition now that they've got, and they need to counteract that and start picking these groups off. First, millennials and migrants, I think, are your first two people. Renters as well, getting people, into that home ownership dream. That's where people really want to see action. This is practical stuff.
This actually is the most sensible I've ever heard this guy talk, because there's nothing about what he's saying that actually is incorrect, that these are the areas in which Labor are winning. The question really here is that why didn't the Liberal Party recognise this and attack those areas as well? Primarily because their sense of conservatism is so restrictive that at the end of the day, they are not able to shift their own mindset to focus on these people, because if they do, they're going to have to go further and further to the left. And that is something that scares the shit out of them.
The Liberal Party needs to go back to basics on aspiration for the individual and their achievement, as well as, of course, all the bigger stuff about culture and economics.
Yeah, but hang on, sorry. We have seen year after year now, every time the Liberal Party goes woke, every time the Liberal Party, in 2013 we had a Tony Abbott Conservative land.
I've been watching these guys for years. This is the first time I've ever seen them on this panel argue with each other and take divergent views. It's fascinating, and I'm just wondering where this is going to go from this point on, because the two people on either side of Murrow are at least arguing some sense, I guess, whereas he is still stuck. And this is the problem with the Liberal Party. As long as they stay stuck like he is and thinking like he is, they will never progress forward, and they'll probably never win an election again until they do.
Landslide. There hasn't been one like it since, and yet the Liberal Party has gone, OK, in Western Australia, in Victoria, every time they've gone to an election, you put up these woke, pathetic characters. We had Dominic Perrottet backing.
Just want to notice the word woke pathetic. I don't know what woke pathetic means as opposed to the sort of crap that you spouse, but woke certainly does mean that whatever wokeness is, it seems to be working, and people like people to be woke or progressive in their thinking as opposed to narrow-mindedness and staleness.
The voice, we've had climate change garbage brought about by the Liberal Party. No wonder you keep losing. You're useless. You're useless.
Well,
Become a Conservative Party again. No wonder Labor are marching into power across the country.
Well, it's not just 2013. You can look at 2019, the unwinnable election that Scott Morrison managed to win by providing a genuine alternative.
Exactly.
Where he wasn't prioritising things like net zero and emissions. And remember, that was the climate change election.
Yes,
That's what Bill
absolutely.
Shorten called it.
And I need to say what a mistake it was electing Morrison. I think the country's learnt by that error, hence the reason why they've shifted further and further to the left, because they recognise, the rest of us recognise, those of us that are reasonably sensible, I think, recognise that Morrison was a disaster. So raising him and suggesting that he won because he was fighting against a candidate, I guess, that or member of the Labor Party, who wasn't very well liked or didn't seem to have the personality that was required to do the job. Nevertheless, Morrison won. We now know what a mistake that was.
That's why the media called it. And he prioritised cheap and reliable energy and somehow won. Last election, net zero. And then he can't really argue the cost of living issues that energy prices bring up because, well, he's on pretty much the same side as Labor in prioritising emissions. And you look at Victoria. I mean, Victoria should be a model of what to avoid. But, James, New South Wales, how late did they pre-select some of those candidates? I mean, how can you expect them to have any impact when you've got a retiring sitting member, well-known, you've got some new face, and they're given no time at all to campaign?
This is a huge problem. The New South Wales division of the Liberal Party is an absolute mess, and a lot of it comes down to that whole...
I just love the fact they're picking themselves apart. I think that's gold.
Moderate faction that goes out, plays games, does all sorts of stuff, and they would rather fight conservatives than they would win elections. But 2019, remember too, Bill Shorten didn't make it easy for the Labor Party too. He came out and said he was going to go after franking credits. He came out and really.
Yeah, but much milder policies than we've now got under Anthony Albanese.
Exactly. And Albanese won because he shut up about those sorts of things and didn't reveal what he was going to do until he came into office.
As did Minns. Minns mentioned in the debate here on Sky, which, by the way, I thought Perrottet won, not the other bloke. Minns mentioned a treaty. He said, oh, yeah, I support a treaty. No one picked him up on it. Why wasn't Dominic Perrottet down his throat going...
Well, primarily because it's not an issue. And I know that you think that it is, but it isn't. And then they go on to attack The Voice and everything else. I just wanted to play this portion of this video. There's heaps of it. You can catch it on YouTube. But it is about these guys actually becoming really, really frustrated with the notion that they lost. And they don't know what to do with it. And there'll be lots and lots of backstabbing. As a result of all of this, go Liberals. The thing that interests me the most was on Twitter, if you haven't seen it, the pictures of Peter Credlin and how she responded. They play actually later on a debate between her and another Liberal, and they are angry, really, really super angry that they've lost this election. And it's no wonder when you look at all the rorts and all the destabilisation that took place within the Liberal Party over the last few years. And so people had lost faith in them. It's as simple as that. And as long as you guys carry on with this sort of garbage, they'll continue to lose faith. So thanks everybody for being with me. Take care, look after yourselves, and be safe.